This is fake as hell, man. Ouch.
Is it worth anything?
Yeah, maybe about $100.
When it comes to the Harrisons of Pawn Stars, it seems like they can do little wrong when it comes to making deals. They've gotten good deals, great deals, and have known when to walk away from some sketchy ones. But every once in a while, they get scammed like the rest of us. Let me show you a few of them.
Hey, before we get into the video, be sure to enter our brand new giveaway. We'll be giving away any of these items. It's your choice. To enter the giveaway, leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, turn on notifications, and most importantly, watch the whole video. It's that simple.
8. Look under the hood first.
How's it going?
It's going well, man. How are you?
I'm Rick.
TC, nice to meet you.
Vehicles at pawn shops aren't too common, but they do happen on occasion, and the Pawn Stars have had some good deals with them. But there is a checklist to go through when evaluating. 1, that they are of value outright, because no one's going to buy a terrible car. 2, that it looks good enough, no major signs of damage and whatnot because it costs money to repair things. And 3, that it runs, so only minor work is requested when trying to sell one of them. Rick forgot this rule when someone brought in an Austin-Healey Sprite, a rare model of Austin-Healey that had only 29,000 ever made in its lifetime. Already a value right there. And on the outside, it was very clean. But when Rick went and tried to start the car, it didn't work. The owner played it off, saying that it was only a small issue, but that he didn't want to fix it himself. Rick believed him and bought the car for $5,000. Not a bad price at all, considering the rarity and uniqueness of the ride. Except that when he went to his mechanic for an appraisal of the damages that need to be made, he was in for a shock. For it most definitely wasn't a simple fix. It was actually a quite large one. Getting the parts and putting into this rare car would cost Rick $6,000, $1,000 more than he paid for the whole car. So not only was he taken, he couldn't even sell the car back for the money that he lost because of what was wrong with it, which made this deal a bust in every way that matters. 7. A suspect jersey.
What do we got? Hey, I got a 61 Willie Mays uniform.
Sports memorabilia is one of the most valuable commodities on the market today. And yes, that includes pawn shops. But it's also one of the most forged properties in the world. People will go and make all kinds of forgeries and claim them to be the real thing, such as when someone came to Pawn Stars and decided to sell them a Willie Mays jersey. Willie Mays is one of the most important baseball players in all of history. Not only did he set a standard for the skill of playing baseball, he also set numerous records and is considered one of the best to ever play. The jersey itself had all the markings of being real, but it also had some clear signs of being fake. Even Chumley felt that something was wrong. Chumley! He noticed that the jersey was clean. While Willie Mays was a legend in many ways, he was known by many because he stole a ton of bases, and when you steal bases, you slide in the dirt. And yet, there wasn't a single hint of a dirt stain on this piece. He also played in the outfield, which should have gotten dirt on him there too. The second red flag was that the piece didn't have a certificate of authenticity, which is almost vital for pieces like this. But Corey liked the piece and he paid $31,000 for it. Eventually, they tried to sell it for $80,000, but couldn't even get a nibble, so they put it up at auction and made $19,200. And then after that auction, word got out that this uniform was never, ever owned by Willie Mays. 6. A complete fantasy piece.
What do we have here?
Well, we got a Wells Fargo strong box and some antique ball and chain.
This particular encounter is hilarious because the Pawn Stars knew it was fake, and yet they still saw value in it and made a purchase. Here's what happened. A customer came in with a box full of Wells Fargo ball and chains, complete with a box to case them all in. This would be a very antique item were it actually a real thing. But the ball and chains had all the markings of a fake, and Rick knew it, and he even told the customer that. Rick could spot almost immediately that the way the ball and chains were put together were fake, as it was put together with technology that they didn't have back in the day. That's something only a veteran would spot. Despite that, Rick got it because, though the ball and chains were fake, he felt that the box was valuable in some way, so he paid a modest $450 for that, and that alone. But when he called in his expert, the Beard of Knowledge, he noted that it was, and I quote, a complete fantasy piece. Think about that for a second. There was literally nothing of value there at all. The only blessing that Rick could salvage was that he was only in the hole for it for $450. He could have had to pay a lot more. 5. Watch carefully.
What do we got here?
Scams happen all the time in the pawn world, and as the elder Harrisons would tell you, you have to learn the craft in order to spot the fakes. In the world of pawn, knowing the materials that might walk into your store is a must. To that end, young Corey Harrison found himself learning on the fly when he was given the family store during a night shift. Even though he was raised in the business of a pawn shop since he was a kid by his father Rick and his grandfather, the Old Man, he still had quite a bit to learn, and that would cost him. Because one thing you need to learn is seeing the differences between legitimate items and fakes that weren't worth anything. One night, a customer came in with what he claimed was a Rolex, which is a very expensive brand of watch. Corey looked at the item and bought it, and the customer seemed to know it was a fake because they spread word about the new guy at the pawn shop, and within the course of a single week, Corey bought several fake Rolexes, costing the shop over $4,000. Granted, there is some slack to be thrown Corey's way. He got caught in a major scam and there were multiple people scamming him, but he should have known the difference between a true Rolex and a fake. The store took a big hit due to this. He learned his lesson though, and you can bet he won't be fooled by another fake Rolex again. 4. Business practices.
What do we got here?
What I hope I have here is an original disintegrator gun from the Buck Rogers series.
Let's talk about a scam that didn't happen on camera, but actually happened behind the scenes. As the Pawn Stars started out, History Channel had no idea how big the show would get. But once it exploded, they made a deal to make sure that Pawn Stars were the sole pawn shop show on the network. It was even in their contracts. So imagine their surprise when the History Network launched Cajun Pawn Stars, a literal spin-off series that was basically them, but in Louisiana instead of Las Vegas. Not exactly the most subtle of moves, History Channel. The Harrisons weren't happy, even saying that they felt blindsided by the spin-off move because they were promised that something like this wouldn't happen. If you don't know, Cajun Pawn Stars was eventually canceled and no other spin-offs have been made or attempted, likely because they don't want to lose the Pawn Stars. 3. What happened here?
So, what do we got here?
1963, American-made Fender Stratocaster. This guitar was actually played by Jimi Hendrix.
Sometimes a scam can come from the most unlikely of places, and not even the Pawn Stars can prevent that from happening, such as when one customer brought in a guitar. But this particular guitar was one that was claimed to have been played by the legend known as Jimi Hendrix. Hendrix was a master on the guitar, and his tracks are still beloved to this day despite the shifting genres. Given his experience, Rick was dubious at first, even with the documentation, and so he decided to do the right thing, even though this would backfire. He called in an expert to verify that not only was this a guitar of the right era, but that it was indeed Hendrix's. Sure enough, the expert verified that everything the seller was saying was true, and even went on to say the value of the piece was a whopping $1 million, all for a single guitar. But again, it's a Hendrix guitar in excellent condition. Of course, Rick did his usual haggling as he needed to make some profit on the deal. But for whatever reason, the seller wouldn't budge from his price of $750,000. So no deal was made. Yet something about the situation felt odd. Not long after, the guitar went to the market, and the person who bought it was the expert Rick called for verification of the piece. So while it's not clear how exactly this happened, the Pawn Stars lost out on a chance for a legendary guitar. 2. The power and failings of auctions.
I came down to my buddy Bill's shop today to check out a vintage motorcycle that he thinks I'd like.
When it comes to selling items at a pawn shop, there are a bunch of options open to you if you know where to look. The easiest way, of course, is to go and just sell to interested people or experts, etc. But when times don't allow for a quick or good sale, Rick often goes to auctions to try and recoup some of his losses. There's an inherent problem with auctions though. If you don't put a reserve on it, or it must make this amount to be sold price, you can lose a lot of money if the bidders aren't interested. And Rick Harrison had this happen to him in the worst way one time. He went to an auction with a rather good guitar that was verified to have been played by a real musician with some fame, as well as a classic motorcycle with sidecar that was made by Indian, one of the most famous motorcycle brands in the world. He had some other items with him as well, as Rick knew not to go to the auction with just a few things. So if one item didn't do well, the others would in theory. But as the auction went on, it was clear that he wasn't going to get what he wanted. All of his items sold for big losses, and an article ran about that auction later and stated that combined, Rick lost $100,000 in terms of what he wanted versus what he got. Now, sure, this isn't exactly a cheat because there was no malice in regards to the bidders, but for the Pawn Stars crew, they want to make back their money and then make more. This didn't happen for them today. 1. A bad fake.
I have a book signed by Shoeless Joe Jackson.
You'd think that the Pawn Stars, with all their years of experience, would be wise enough to call in help when they need it, especially for an item with a lot of potential value. And yet, for one of the biggest scams in Pawn Stars history, that didn't happen. A customer came into Gold and Silver Pawn to sell a book he claimed to be signed by legendary baseball player Shoeless Joe Jackson. The man was a legend in the game for numerous reasons, and as Rick noted in the episode, his signature is one of the rarest in the world to find. This is because Joe Jackson was illiterate and actually couldn't write his name very well, so finding his true signature was a bit of a challenge. Verification was key to make sure it was a good signature and deal. Rick saw the warning signs of the fake, including a certificate of authenticity that was very suspect. And Rick even noted to the customer that this is a highly forged signature in the trade. But he couldn't resist having a classic piece of baseball history, so he bought it for $13,000. The problem came when he called in not one, but two signature authenticators, both of whom revealed that he got duped in the worst way possible. Adding insult to injury, as if he needed that at all, they also noted that the forged signature wasn't that good. If he had followed his business sense and called in an expert, the whole thing could have been avoided. Instead, it was a clear moment of embarrassment for Rick Harrison and a moment he won't forget for some time.